Okay, at this time we're going to resume with our final block of the afternoon. It includes the IETF report, the NRO activities report, and the Internet Technology Health Indicators report. The first of these are given by our IETF reporter, Cathy Aronson. Come on up, Cathy.
Hi. So I have 30 minutes and 85 slides. I think I need like a speed skating outfit.
40 minutes.
Oh, I guess I have 40 minutes. Uh-oh, watch out. This is my current Neener slide. This is one of the cabins from the movie Shane, and I took that. Anyway, it was from the 50s, so maybe you didn't see it, but anyway. All right. So this slide is probably going to go away. For years it said it wasn't official, but I guess I'm official now. That's kind of scary. Anyway, I'd love your feedback. If you were there and I got something wrong or you're just annoyed at what I said, you're welcome to tell me. It's happened before. And a lot of this is my opinion and my take on what happens, so, you know, take it for what it's worth. I forgot this last year, and it confused people. This meeting, I'm always talking about two IETFs. So this was the Seoul IETF in November and the March one that just ended Friday. Talk about being the speed skater. So if you're looking for a particular set of slides, all my slides are kind of mixed up in order of when I want to talk about them, since I have 85 slides and 40 minutes. It's a little bit of a challenge. So if you have a hard time finding a reference or whatever, just let me know and I'll help you find it. So let's see. Oh, super duper duper exciting week at the IETF. Are you ready? Is everybody ready? We have the first woman chair of the IETF. And we have the first woman chair of the IRTF. So awesome. Way to represent. They're both awesome, and it's just going to be really, it's historic. The shoes are out, but I have a couple of collages that you can view at your leisure of various things I saw throughout the week. I like the Spam fried rice the best. And in Chicago, we played whirly ball, and if you've never played whirly ball, it's super fun. Elise and I managed to win a game on our team, and I have a lot of bruises. So anyway, there's 6 different places in the country that you can play this horrible game in bumper cars. So anyway, on to the real stuff. But it used to be an ancient Nanog tradition to play whirly ball. There's one in Florida, there's one in Cleveland, there's one, no, they're not in Ann Arbor anymore, but there are 2 in Michigan in towns I've never heard of. And there's one in Chicago, right? I'm sorry? Oh, is there one in Seattle? Oh, I didn't know that. That's news to me. Okay, so what is the IEPG? The IEPG is a working group that's happened for the last 25 years, maybe, on the Sunday before IETF from 10 to noon, and it's really a group of operators that talk about stuff that's pretty interesting. It's probably the most interesting part of my talk, thus I put it first. So we had a demo of the DNSDB and a bunch of information about some attacks that were happening on the DNS. So if you want to look, like I said, this is a flyby overview. So some of this stuff, if you want to read about it, you'll have to look it up. But let's see. And there's some database, some information about the number of queries and how to mitigate attacks that you can look up if you want. And Jeff's talks are always super interesting. Let's see. Some data about Dns Sec Deployment. 89% of the TLDs are signed, but only 15% of queries are being validated right now. There's packet capture of the DNS. There's some tools that are available now. So there's a lot of DNS. IEPG was almost all DNS both times, maybe. Okay, so there's some, you can measure IPv4 and IPv6 NAT, and there's actually a tool you can look up if you want to check it out. Here's some data from the measurements. This was at I think this was at the Seoul IETF, so it's data from November. So there's a lot of NAT 4 to 4, so V4 to V4, V6 to V6 is small, V6 only hosts 0, which has actually gone up. I have some more stats on that. So there's some data, and you can run this tool that was on the previous slide if you want to check it out. It's a LACNIC tool, apparently. So there's a thing called Let's Encrypt. It sounds pretty exciting, and that people are starting to use. And so a lot more encryption is happening since the Snowden events and those sorts of things. So there's some information about that. So you can actually sign your various things, your domain and stuff for free instead of having to pay, which is making more people do it, which is a good thing. This is he called it the Dns Horror Show. I don't know. I think there's a lot more scary things. But there's a lot of stuff going on with bad stuff that's happening in the DNS. Like he said, CDNs have a special place in hell. There's like extra stuff at the end of packets. There's NS records that are created on the fly. My favorite is if you query for a V6A record, you get a V4 answer, which is somehow not right. Kind of bad, I think. So anyway, Jeff gave a talk just last week in Chicago about the BGP4 routing table, and there's some really interesting takeaways for this group in particular. The one I like the best that isn't necessarily for this group is there's a whole chunk of the internet that can't get to a whole other chunk of the internet, and no one seems to care, which I think is pretty interesting. But maybe I don't know, maybe everybody just goes to, their big websites and they don't really go to the ends of the earth anymore. But a few things that are really interesting is that as we've run out of addresses, the routing table is still growing at the same rate. So the same number of routing entries are being added every month, but they cover less and less space. But for some reason, there's still more routes, the same number of routes, pretty consistently. The average diameter of the network hasn't really changed. It's pretty, I forget it. I don't know, 5 point whatever. I don't know if I have it on my next slide. But they're adding like 6,000 prefixes a year, but they're just smaller and smaller. The thing that's really interesting is that, maybe it's not on this slide yet, but I'm going to say it anyway, that older address space is starting to show up in the routing table, like address space that might not have been previously routed, but maybe it got transferred to somebody. So older prefixes that were assigned long ago are starting to show up in the routing table, which is really interesting. So this whole transfer process that we've been doing and trying to free up old address space is actually happening. A small number of prefixes are generating all the noise. That's nothing new, but it's the same in V4 as in V6. Let's see. Yeah, like I said, there's a whole part of the internet that can't get to a whole other part of the internet. Yeah, anyway, no one's complaining. And like I said, the age of the address space is going up, which is good. It's a good thing. Let's see, what else? These are some more drafts that are going on. This guy gave this whole talk about the whole mismatch between the IETF saying, well, you should use a /64, now you should use a 128, like a 127 is okay. These are all the different RFCs and how they've differently specified what length prefix you should use. It's a little confusing, to say the least, but I found it really entertaining. Let's see. Bundled domains. So each one of these, for those of you who haven't seen this speed skating event before, each working group I go to or birds of feather session, I try to put a little bit of a blurb for you to refer to as to what in the world that thing is. So this is the bundled domains and what it is. I'm not going to talk too much about this, but this is a little bit interesting. So in Chinese, there's like 2 different character sets, and they'll have the same domain pronounced the same way but spelled differently, and they're supposed to resolve to the same thing. And so there's a big work underway with these non-ASCII character sets to try to figure out how to make that all work. So that was one of the big talks that we had. Okay, so this is really awesome. So I always ask people, if you hear about something that's going on at the IETF and you think I should go to it, David Huberman posted a note about this, and sometimes I catch these things and sometimes I don't. But this is called CHASM, and basically it was a birds of feather session to not form a working group about this, but about IP address management systems and what people might want from IP address management systems. And since we're all about IP addresses here, it was a good thing to go to. It's a little not quite thought through, but these are all the different, they're trying to define like what you would want to do with an IP address management system. And so there's a draft that they're starting to talk about that. And maybe I don't know, it seems like they might form a working group. But George Michelson was asking about the layer between the IP address management system and the RIRs, like the whois and RPKI and all that stuff. Like maybe we should define the layer, you know, what do we need from all these ISPs, IP address numbering systems. So, and whether we should use tools that already exist, like OpenID and JSON and REST and all that. So one guy said we're inching toward thinking about how to invent a conversation. So they're still kind of figuring their way. But I might not necessarily have found this on the agenda, or something might have seemed more important to me. So I really appreciate it being pointed out. So if you see something, or if there's something that's interesting for this report that you think I should go to, then by all means mention it. So V6 Ops, I go to this one every single time. This is basically operations of the V6 internet, how to interact with V4 only networks. Let's see. So these are some of the drafts we talked about. The first one talks about PI and PA space, and I always try to follow those because I don't really like the IETF specifying whether you should use provider aggregated or provider independent space. Like, it seems like it might be a little overreach. So I've been following that. They're not really specifying about what they talk about it. And then I talked about this a few times, a unique prefix per host instead of a unique IPv6 address per host, and there's a lot of work being done there. The enterprise multi-homing talk that I talked about last time, that I heard 5 times, is still kind of moving its way forward. So they're still trying to solve multi-homing, which seems like the age-old problem. So a couple of organizations got together and drafted requirements for IPv6 routers. I was one of the people who worked on the requirements for regular, ordinary routers in the 90s. So I've been following that because, well, routers should do things and not do things. But it seems like it's pretty straightforward, and it's a good read. Let's see. And then there's a customer edge router document, which I'm not really sure how that interacts with Homenet yet. So it seems like it's kind of redundant with Homenet, but we'll see. And they're talking about making it so that it's only really specifying things for V6 only to interact with V4, as opposed to V4 only interacting with V6, which is it's a step along the evolution. Let's see. This is dynamically configuring V6 hosts, and there's a lot of stuff going on there. And happy eyeballs is how happy are your customers using V6. And they're talking about if you get a V4 address and a V6 address, if you get the V6 address first, they're saying maybe you should just use V6 and not wait for the V4 address. And Apple's done a ton of work with happy eyeballs and their gajillion devices that have them. So their paper is pretty interesting on that. Let's see. I talked about this in another talk too, the /48 for the transition. It seems like maybe it's a little late for that, but the document's still moving forward. V6 use cases, I think, like what John was saying on the panel, like there's so much more that you can do, and you don't have to do the gymnastics to make the address space work. So why not start looking at different things that could be done with V6 that maybe you can't do anymore with V4? So So 6-man is changes to the V6 spec to help make V6 more deployable as opposed to the operational parts of V6. And this is my favorite one. So IPv6 is still not an official internet standard. So gotta love that. So it's moving forward to become, it's a draft standard that we've all been implementing for, 15 years or something? 20 years? Yeah. So someday it'll be an actual internet standard. Awesome. But they're just trying to make the tweaks to kind of catch it up with where we are now so that it could become a real standard. Let's see. More 6-man, V6 node requirements. So what do you need from a V6 node and how should it interact? Let's see. A lot of this stuff I think I'm just going to skim. I went to one version of human rights, and we have the human rights chair here, Avri, which is awesome. So they're looking at protocols and how they interact with human rights, affect human rights, limit human rights. And it's pretty interesting work. And actually there was a panel I'll talk about at the plenary this time that was really great, that was all about that. Let's see. So, and if you haven't ever read the Human Rights Declaration, that's really a good read. So I put the link in here. It's good to know. Let's see. There was an Internet Society lunch in Seoul about Internet of Things, which is not my favorite term. And it was pretty interesting. I have a few little notes from that. And it was a free lunch, so girls got to go. The technical plenary was a little bit of an advertisement, but the John Postel Award recipient was the woman that started really the first internet connection in Thailand, and her talk was really interesting, and she's done a lot of really good work in Southeast Asia, so that was pretty exciting. I dare not pronounce her last name, but let's see. The IAB technical plenary was all about, this one was in Seoul, I believe, and it was all about the latest attacks that were happening at that time. And then the one in Chicago, like I said, was all about human rights, and it was a really nice discussion between Dave Clark, which is who is truly one of the many fathers of the internet, mothers of the internet. And that was pretty cool. That's all recorded too, so if you have a chance, you should check it out. It was a really good talk. Let's see, the security AD, the security directorate. Sometimes when I don't have a V6 thing to go do, I go to the overview ones, and sometimes they're just repeats, but this one was actually really interesting. Some work that's done with different incidents in Korea, because we were in South Korea. So they have a lot of, just like everybody here, a lot of attacks going on and a lot of people trying to figure out ways to solve them. And if you have a lot of questions about security, we have Medica Keo, who's, our local resident expert. So she can update you as well on some of these guys. So DNS Ops, again, it's a working group that's all about operations of the DNS and the root zones. I try to go to this one when I can. And these are some of the things that are going on about IPv4 only.arpa, which I've been kind of trying to follow. But let's see. There's a bunch of work being done to capture DNS packets and analyze them. You can get bulk captures now too. Let's see. A lot of people are thinking that what we should do is move to doing DNS over TCP because it's connection oriented and it's more reliable. So there's a lot of work being done on documentation of why you want to do that and why it's better and the connections are long lived and all that sort of stuff. And then there's a few more crypto drafts that I'm not even qualified to talk about, but you can read them if you're interested in cryptography. Let's see, and these are a few more drafts that are being worked on that I have 85 slides and 40 minutes. Now, the IRTF is the Internet Research Task Force, again, newly headed by a woman, yay. And some of the stuff that's going on there, it's kind of pre-IETF, so it's stuff that may be coming in the future. There's a lot of work on like artificial intelligence. There's also the Applied Networking Research Prize, which are people, they submit their research and then they win. And every IETF, there's at least a couple of them that give a talk. Let's see. And I guess I thought I had more slides on IRTF, but I guess I don't. So GROW is the Global Routing Operations Working Group. So a lot of really high-level routing stuff happens in there, like coordinating MTUs at exchange points and different kinds of things that the global routing system would need as opposed to an individual protocol. So one of the things that's being drafted is what should BGP do when you pull your box out of the router and you plug some stuff into it, and basically it should do no harm instead of just starting, some people think it shouldn't start advertising everything. It should just, bring up the neighbor and maybe you tell it what you want it to do. So there's some work being done there, some work being done on BGP communities. So Bgp Bmp is a BGP monitoring protocol, and it's being deployed, and there's a lot of work being done to look at what's really going on in the BGP. So, and there's a tool that some folks were talking about that they wrote that would take all of the routing out of route views and the routing version of route views in Europe and look at it with those metrics. And the reason that tool got written is because not enough people are running BMP yet to actually get enough data out of it to really look at what's going on in the routing table. But there's some tools that are, this MRT2 BMP is publicly available, and you can run your routing data through it and look at it. So let's see. Oh, and they're adding features to it that's more local routing. So BMP in the beginning is just pre and post policy, but this would be more localized routing that you could get in it, and there's some folks working on code for that. So session culling. So this is a draft that would specify how you would slowly turn the routing off before you took a router down for maintenance so that everything would reroute and it wouldn't just be down until it rerouted. So that's, and there's some work being done, I think I talked about before in the autonomic networking about something similar where there's a management system that would do something similar, and I guess now they're trying to specify it. So this was probably one of the more interesting groups that I went to, and I just had nothing V6 to do at the time, so I went in there. It's a whole lot of measurement and analysis and a whole lot of people measuring stuff, which is super fun. So it turns out what you name your machine and when you connect to the network, like a lot of your information is really easily figured out from the connection when you connect your computer. Like there were so many people in this study that their name was unique. So like they used their first name, but maybe their first name was really unusual and there were a lot of them. So like people can actually tell who you are. So they were recommending like you name your machine something, you change your login name, all the usual stuff. But they actually did a whole bunch of like sniffing on the wire and trying to figure out who all these people were, and they could. It's kind of creepy. Let's see. This is some IPv6 data. I don't know, I cut and pasted it. It might be hard to read. But this is prefixes, V6 client address counts, and various different protocols that are either being phased out or not. But V6 is definitely happening out there, which is kind of neat. Let's see, what else? This is a global coordination to measure the internet. And the talks were really interesting about this, and there's a link there if you want to check it out. Let's see. Why is it not? I don't know what else I want to talk about here. I think we'll skip that. So IPv6 support. Oh, I know what the takeaway from this was. I'm sorry. Every once in a while in this talk, there's a slide. I'm like, why in the world did I put that in there? Oh, it's 89 slides in 40 minutes. They're starting to see 3% v6 only hosts, and they think some of them are 6 to 4, so they're really 6, but they're translating to 4. But still, we're starting to see, and it sounds like from what John was saying, there's a whole lot of v6 only that's 6 to 4 on Comcast too. So, it's really starting to happen. It's like kind of cool. Let's see. This is more looking at v6 deployments. There's also a bunch of tools being written to generate the reverse zones for v6 because they're ginormous and you really don't want to have to type that stuff. So a lot of DNS is being generated forward and reverse to match and just plugged in there because the files are huge and the address spaces are huge. Let's see. Oh, okay. So I always used to complain about there were like addresses in v6 that were generated randomly, and random is all fine and good as long as you don't all start with the random number of 1. So these keys that were used were all generated with really faulty random number generators, and so they were really, really bad keys using just to secure the DNS. So there's this woman that did all this research, and it was completely ridiculous. It's like everybody started with 2, and they thought their key was going to be secure. It's really bad. It's actually a really comical presentation. So there's an online mobile app that's been put out to measure online internet censorship. I don't know. I haven't tried it yet, but the OONI app. Got to get it. So Sunset v4 hasn't met in a while. I think they met in Seoul. And I think, let's see, what did we... Oh, it's the proposal to stop work on v4. So the IETF is really stopping protocol work on v4 unless it's needed to interoperate with v6. So it's really become a limited, much more focus on v6, much less focus on v4. Let's see. And the IAB has actually put out a statement, v4 is exhausted, wake up, start doing v6. Only took, I don't know, a long time. I guess local hosts can resolve to anything, so they're talking about how maybe it should just be localhost again. It's a host thing. Let's see. There is a bunch of work in the IRTF happening on machine learning. So it's interesting to follow. Let's see. The Internet Area is another one of those high-level working groups of stuff that they don't know where to quite put it yet. Okay, so IPv version 10. Unfortunately for this guy, he was remote and his audio got cut off and we never got to actually hear his talk. But it's like another weird tunneling protocol where you put v4 and v6 in the header and you call it v10. Not sure that's gonna go very far, but I don't know. I can't wait. So there's a draft if you want to check it out, but I can't imagine. It's crazy, right? Joe's like laughing hysterically up here. GUE is another tunneling protocol that we're not super happy about because there's too many tunneling protocols. Let's see what else. I think we can... extended ping is something that if you're an operator you might look into. So there's a lot of security implications with extended ping. So maybe you ping something and you get information about the other interfaces is kind of what it's about. So maybe you don't necessarily have to get the response from the interface that you pinged over. So there's a lot of work being done by Ron Bonica on the draft for that. And I'm not so sure about that. So my favorite, Homenet. We're still talking about the same old things in Homenet. This is the purpose of the group. It's basically to make an automated, easy to install, plug and play home gizmo network for everybody kind of thing. So there's some drafts. They're still debating about .homenet because they had home.net, but then it wasn't defined as a special purpose domain, and people complained for various reasons. So they're trying to standardize .homenet. And I think we're in the same place we were in Seoul and in Chicago, so I'm not really sure how far we're going to get with that. But I really feel like from the panel discussion that maybe some of this stuff, the ship already sailed. I think I even heard somebody on the panel say that in an IETF at one point. So these are some more drafts that are going on in Homenet. HNCP is a Homenet routing protocol. Let's see. And then in Chicago, I call him the world's biggest fan of Babel. So Babel is the other routing protocol for Homenet, and basically it's sort of like RIP on steroids. And I don't know why we needed a new RIP, but apparently we did. And they're still talking about .homenet, like I said. So Cider, the Secure Interdomain Routing Working Group, became Cider Ops. So basically it's far enough along that it's just all about operating it now. So we just have Cider Ops working groups, and I only went just briefly because there was a lot of stuff going on. But here's some of the stuff that's going on in Cider. They're doing a lot of testing on certificate authorities and them talking to each other and fetching data back and forth. And maybe during the engineering report from ARIN, we'll hear more about the RPKI, probably. Yeah, so they said that they were going to have more answers at the next meeting, but they didn't. So I don't have much to talk about that. There's some route leak drafts that are pretty interesting. Routing area is another one of the groups that has a lot of stuff under it. Let's see. Yeah, dynamic multipath routing is how to route around bottlenecks. Let's see what else. These are some more of the drafts from there. DNS service discovery. I think I went to this one in Seoul. There's a lot of stuff to try to make the DNS better, like pushing the information ahead of time and discovering proxies and that sort of thing going on. Let's see. Operations area. There was a really neat presentation about Wi-Fi calling and how it works and what they need to make it work better. It's about their deployment. There were some pretty good graphs. Let's see. I went to this IP wireless access and vehicular networks because the whole thing just terrifies me. Cars talking to each other and routing around each other. And so there was, these are the drafts that they were talking about in there. 802.11 OCB, and which is this outside the context of a basic service. I don't know how they get these names. So this is some of the work that's going on in there. I don't really want my car to talk to another car. I don't know about you guys, but yeah, wow. Okay, so these are some cool links to check out if you're interested in IETF stuff. And like I said, if you can't find something on my slides and you want more info, just send me an email. And if you're going to your first IETF, there's a video on how people might be rude to you and you need to read stuff ahead of time. And there's the IETF sisters, so we'll all support you if you're a sister. You know, just find one of us. And this is my favorite sign from Seoul and the quote of the meeting. So anyway, does anybody have any questions or comments or?
Microphones are now open for shorter speeches disguised as questions.
I have to give credit to Randy Bush for that. He had like a comic that said that, and I just stole it. And then there were all these people at the microphone just like crazy going on and on. Anyway.
Thank you, Cathy.